The text came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, which should have been my first warning. Nothing good ever comes from family group chats after 11 p.m. Big announcement. My brother Ethan typed, followed by 3 champagne emojis. Jennifer and I are getting married. June 15th. Details to follow. The responses flooded in immediately. Congratulations from aunts and uncles, heart emojis from cousins, my mother's predictably effusive, so happy for you both. I typed, congratulations Ethan. Really happy for you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then my phone buzzed with a private message. From Ethan. We need to talk about the wedding. Call me tomorrow. I stared at that message, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Not thanks sis, or can't wait for you to be there. Just we need to talk. I didn't sleep well. Ethan called at 8 a.m. sharp, which meant he'd been up thinking about this conversation. My brother wasn't a morning person. Hey, I answered. Congratulations again. So here's the thing, he interrupted. Jennifer and I have been talking and we're doing a really specific aesthetic for the wedding. Very curated. Very intentional. I waited, saying nothing. We're keeping the guest list tight. Intimate. Only people who really fit the vibe we're going for. Okay, I said slowly. And the thing is. He exhaled. The thing is, Jennifer's concerned about the photos. We're spending $15,000 on a photographer. Her dress is custom Vera Wang. The venue is this incredible estate in the Hamptons. Everything has to be perfect. Ethan, what are you trying to say? You're not invited. The words came out in a rush. To the wedding. We think it's better if you sit this one out. Silence stretched between us. I should have been shocked, devastated, angry. Instead, I felt something close to curiosity. Like watching a car accident in slow motion, morbidly fascinated by how bad it would get. Why? I asked. Jennifer says you'd ruin the photos. You know how you dress, Emma. Target and Old Navy. We can't have that in our wedding pictures. The aesthetic. The aesthetic, I repeated flatly. This is important to us. To Jennifer. And honestly, having you there would just be awkward. You don't really fit with our crowd. Jennifer's friends are all fashion industry people, influencers, people with actual style. I see. Don't be dramatic about this. It's not personal. It's just, you're not really wedding material. No offense. Every word was offensive. But I kept my voice calm. Does Mom know? I'm telling everyone today. They'll understand. It's my special day. I get to decide who's there. You're right, I said. It is your day. So you're okay with this? I didn't say that. But it's your choice to make. Great. Glad you're being mature about it. He sounded relieved, like he'd expected more resistance. I knew you'd understand. We hung up. I sat in my apartment. My penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, though Ethan didn't know that, and stared at the skyline. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Honey, Ethan explained the wedding situation. I know you're disappointed, but it's his special day. Let's not make this difficult. I typed back, okay. Just that. Nothing more. I should probably explain how we got here. Ethan was the golden child, always had been. Handsome, charismatic, blessed with the kind of easy charm that made people immediately like him. He'd bounced between marketing jobs, never quite finding his footing, but always landing somewhere decent through sheer force of personality. He was 32, made about $95,000 a year, and lived in a nice apartment in Brooklyn that my parents helped subsidize. Jennifer, his fiancée, was an influencer, with 47,000 Instagram followers and a part-time job at a PR agency. Together, they created content about luxury lifestyle despite barely being able to afford it. I was the invisible sister. Quieter, less social, someone who didn't care about appearances. I'd gone to Columbia for computer science, worked insane hours through my 20s, and at 29 had co-founded a cybersecurity firm that had just been acquired for $340 million. My personal take from the acquisition was $127 million post-tax. My family didn't know. They knew I worked in tech and did something with computers. They assumed I made maybe $80,000 a year and lived in a modest apartment, somewhere in Manhattan. I'd never corrected them. But Because I'd learned early that my family's love was conditional on need. When they thought you had nothing, they pitied you. When they knew you had everything, they wanted pieces of it. So I'd stayed silent. Dressed simply when I saw them, which was rarely. Drove a practical Honda when I visited. My actual car collection stayed in a private garage. Let them assume I was the tech nerd barely scraping by while Ethan was the successful, stylish one. And now Ethan was uninviting me from his wedding because I'd ruined the photos. The irony was exquisite. Over the next 6 weeks, I watched the wedding planning unfold on Instagram. Jennifer posted constantly. Dress fittings, venue tours, floral arrangements, her amazing wedding planner, who was transforming their vision into reality. Every post dripped with borrowed luxury, the kind of aesthetic you create when you're desperate to look wealthy without actually being wealthy. My mother called twice to make sure you're not upset about the wedding situation. I'm not upset, I said truthfully both times. I wasn't. I was something else entirely. Something colder and more calculating. Ethan's just trying to make Jennifer happy, Mom explained. You know how important this is to her. Her whole family will be there and they're very particular. I understand. You're being so mature about this, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. She'd never been proud of me when I'd actually accomplished anything. But she was proud that I was accepting exclusion gracefully. Perfect. My assistant, Claire, had different thoughts when I told her about the wedding situation. Your brother uninvited you because you'd ruined photos? She stared at me across my office desk, her expression somewhere between disbelief and rage. And you're just accepting this? It's his wedding. His choice. Emma, you're literally wearing a custom Dior suit right now. You own a penthouse in Manhattan. You have a net worth of... She lowered her voice even though we were alone. You're not exactly the fashion disaster he's describing. They don't know that. Why don't they know that? I considered the question. Because I wanted to see who they were when they thought I had nothing they wanted. And now I know. Claire shook her head. What are you going to do? Nothing. Nothing. It's his wedding day. I'm not going to ruin it. She gave me a look that said she didn't quite believe me. However, I added, June 15th is also the night of the Tech Innovation Gala. The one honoring this year's breakthrough companies and their founders. I believe we're being honored for the cybersecurity acquisition. You're going to that instead? I'm being presented with an award by the mayor. Several Fortune 500 CEOs will be there. Press coverage, professional photographers, the works. I smiled slightly. And it's black tie. I'll need to look presentable. Claire's expression shifted to something like understanding. You're terrifying sometimes. You know that. I prefer strategic. June 15th arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 75 degrees, zero humidity. The kind of day that makes wedding photographers ecstatic. I spent the morning at a spa, then met with my stylist at 2 p.m. We'd been planning this look for weeks. The gown was custom Elie Saab, a masterpiece in midnight blue silk with hand-embroidered silver details that caught the light like stars. It had cost $45,000. The jewelry was estate pieces I'd purchased at auction. A diamond necklace and matching earrings that had once belonged to a French aristocrat. Conservative estimate, $280,000. My hair was styled in an elegant updo, makeup flawless but understated. I looked like old money, which was appropriate since I was now, technically, new money that had bought several old money things. Claire whistled when she saw me. Ethan's going to lose his mind. Ethan's not going to see me. He's at his wedding in the Hamptons. I'm at a gala in Midtown. Right. Totally different events. No connection whatsoever. Exactly. The Tech Innovation Gala was at the Plaza Hotel with about 300 attendees. CEOs, founders, investors, politicians, and press. I arrived with my business partner, David, who'd also cleaned up impressively in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo. Ready to be celebrated? He asked as we walked the red carpet. Always. Photographers called my name. I posed, smiled, answered questions about the acquisition and our company's future. Several tech journalists wanted interviews. A reporter from Forbes asked about my background, my journey, what advice I had for young women in tech. I gave thoughtful answers, aware that everything I said would be quoted, photographed, shared across social media. The mayor gave a speech praising innovation and entrepreneurship. Our company was called to the stage. David and I accepted the award together while 200 people applauded. More photos, more press, more validation of everything I'd built. During dinner, I sat between a Fortune 500 CEO and a venture capitalist who managed a $2 billion fund. We discussed market trends, investment strategies, and the future of cybersecurity. It was the kind of conversation where everyone at the table understood the language of success. Someone posted a photo to Instagram around 8 p.m. Me in my Ellie Saab gown standing between the mayor and the Fortune 500 CEO, holding my award and laughing at something the mayor had said. I looked powerful, polished, completely in my element. The caption read, "Tech pioneer Emma Chin honored at tonight's Innovation Gala. From startup to $340 million acquisition. A masterclass in building success." That photo would go viral by morning. But I didn't know that yet. At the gala, I was just enjoying the evening, surrounded by people who understood what I'd accomplished and why it mattered. Meanwhile, according to what I learned later, Ethan's wedding was unfolding in the Hamptons. The ceremony had been beautiful. Jennifer in her Vera Wang gown, Ethan in his custom suit, exchanging vows in front of 120 carefully curated guests at a waterfront estate. The aesthetic was romantic elegance, all whites and creams and gold accents, with enough flowers to support a small florist for a year. The photos were exactly what Jennifer had envisioned. Perfect, polished, Instagram ready. At the reception, while I was accepting my award at the plaza, Ethan was giving his best man speech about finding true love and building a perfect life together. His best man, Kyle, was scrolling through Instagram during the dinner service. A social media manager, he couldn't help himself. And that's when he saw the photo. Me in a gown that cost more than Ethan's entire wedding budget, standing with the mayor and a CEO whose net worth exceeded $4 billion, at an event that required serious credentials even to attend. "Dude," Kyle said, interrupting Ethan mid-conversation with a groomsman. "Isn't that your sister?" He showed Ethan his phone. According to Kyle's later account to mutual friends, Ethan's face went through several distinct phases: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then a very specific shade of pale that suggested his entire worldview was crashing down around him. That can't be." Ethan grabbed the phone, zooming in on the photo as if closer inspection would reveal it was someone else. But it was definitely me. Same face, same smile, just dramatically elevated styling. "Emma Chin, tech entrepreneur," Kyle read the caption aloud. $340 million acquisition. "Dude, what the hell? Your sister is Emma Chin? The Emma Chin? The one who sold that cybersecurity company?" The table had gone quiet. Other guests were looking over now, pulling out their own phones, searching for the photo. Jennifer appeared at Ethan's shoulder, her face already tight with the tension of managing a perfect wedding day. "What's wrong?" Ethan couldn't speak. He just handed her the phone. Jennifer stared at the screen. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the color draining from her face. "This is your sister? The one who shops at Target? The one who'd ruin our photos?" I didn't know." Ethan's voice was barely audible. Kyle, bless his social media manager heart, had already found more. "There's an article from Forbes. Emma Chin, from Columbia grad to tech success story. This says she co-founded the company 7 years ago. Holy shit, Ethan. Your sister is worth over $100 million. The murmur spread through the reception like wildfire. Phones came out. Guests started searching, finding articles, photos, interviews. The tech world and the social world were more connected than Ethan had realized. Several of Jennifer's influencer friends recognized my name immediately. "You uninvited Emma Chin from your wedding?" one of them said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Emma Chin, who was literally just named one of Forbes' most powerful women in tech? Jennifer looked like she might be sick. This was not the aesthetic she'd planned for. My mother, sitting at the family table, was staring at her phone with an expression of absolute shock. My father looked between the phone and Ethan, his face growing redder by the second. "You told us she worked a basic tech job," Dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You said she couldn't afford nice clothes. You said she'd ruin the photos." "I didn't know." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "How could you not know?" Mom asked. "She's your sister. She never told us. She let us think she was struggling." Ka was still scrolling. "Oh man. Well, this is bad. People are already connecting the dots. Someone posted asking why you're not in any of her photos. Someone else is saying they heard you uninvited your own sister because she wasn't fashionable enough. Jennifer made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Her perfect wedding was becoming a social media disaster in real time. We need to fix this, she said. Call her. Apologize. Something. Ethan pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Dial my number. I was at dinner, my phone on silent, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding 90 miles away. I didn't see his call. Or the 12 texts that followed. Or my mother's increasingly frantic messages. I was too busy discussing venture capital opportunities with a billionaire who thought my insights on cybersecurity were refreshingly pragmatic. I didn't check my phone until the gala was winding down around 11 p.m. 43 missed calls. 72 text messages. My voicemail was full. Claire, I said, showing her my phone. I think something happened. She looked at the screen and started laughing. Oh, something happened all right. I opened my messages. The family group chat was exploding. Mom, Emma, call me right now. Dad, we need to talk. Immediately. Ethan, why didn't you tell us? Ethan, Emma, please. Ethan, everyone here knows who you are. Ethan, this is so humiliating. Ethan, Jennifer is crying. Ethan, how could you do this to me? And then about 20 messages later. Ethan, I'm sorry. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Ethan, please call me back. I stared at the messages, feeling nothing in particular. Maybe a distant echo of satisfaction. Mostly just tired. Are you going to call him? Claire asked. Not tonight. Tonight is his wedding night. I wouldn't want to ruin that. She laughed again. You're absolutely ruthless. I'm not doing anything. I'm just attending an event where I was honored for my professional achievements. If that somehow affects his wedding, that's not really my problem. The internet doesn't see it that way. You're trending on Twitter. Hashtag #EmmaChenWedding and hashtag WeddingPhotoscape are both going viral. I looked at her. What? She showed me her phone. Someone had made the connection between my gala photos and Ethan's wedding date. Screenshots of Jennifer's perfect wedding posts were being compared to my gala photos. People were piecing together that I'd been uninvited. The narrative was writing itself. Successful woman excluded from family wedding for not being fashionable enough. Shows up to prestigious gala looking like royalty while her brother's wedding becomes a social media disaster. I didn't do this, I said. No, Claire agreed. But you didn't stop it either. Should I have stayed home? Skipped an award ceremony to avoid making my brother uncomfortable? Of course not. But you knew this would happen. He was right. I had known. Maybe not the exact details, but I'd known that attending a high-profile event on his wedding day looking like this with these connections, I'd known it would eventually get back to him. I'd just underestimated how quickly social media would make the connection. What are you going to do? Claire asked. I looked at my phone, at the flood of messages, at my brother's desperate apologies that came way too late. Right now. I'm going home. Tomorrow I'll decide whether he deserves a response. I didn't call him back that night. Or the next day. I needed time to think, to process, to figure out what I actually wanted from this situation. My parents showed up at my apartment on Sunday afternoon. I buzzed them up, watching their expressions change as they stepped out of the private elevator into my penthouse. My mother actually gasped. Emma, what is this place? My home. Would you like coffee? Tea? They wandered through the space like tourists in a museum, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the original artwork, the designer furniture, the view of Central Park that probably added several million to the property value. How long have you lived here? Dad asked. 3 years. I bought it after my company's Series B funding round. You bought? Mom sat down heavily on my Barcelona chair. You bought this place? Yes. The whole floor. Plus the one above. I use it as a home office. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Emma, what exactly do you do? What did you build? So I told them. The whole story, from founding the company with David to building our client base to the acquisition. The technical details, the business strategy, the years of 18-hour days and constant stress. How we'd solved a critical cybersecurity problem that major corporations were desperate for. $340 million, Mom whispered. Your company sold for $340 million. Yes. My personal share after taxes was about $127 million. Silence filled the apartment. Why didn't you tell us? Dad finally asked. Why let us think you were struggling? I wasn't struggling. You assumed I was. There's a difference. That's not an answer. Isn't it? I met his eyes. When did any of you ask about my work? Really ask with genuine interest? When did you ever visit my office, meet my team, want to understand what I was building? You said you worked in tech, Mom protested. You said you did computer security stuff. That's so vague. And you never asked follow-up questions. You never wanted details. You had Ethan, the successful one, the charismatic one, the one you could brag about to your friends. I was just the nerdy daughter who did something boring with computers. The truth hung in the air between us. Ethan's devastated, Mom said quietly. The wedding it became about you instead of about him and Jennifer. People were on their phones all night looking you up. Jennifer's crying. She says her perfect day was ruined. I was 90 miles away, I said. At my own event. Accepting an award for my work. I didn't crash the wedding. I didn't post those photos to be spiteful. I was just living my life. On his wedding day, Dad said. Yes. On a day that happened to also be his wedding day. Should I have declined the award? Skipped the ceremony? Hidden my success so he could feel special? You could have told him, Mom said. Before. Any time in the last 7 years, you could have told him what you were building. So he could ask for money? So he could tell his friends his sister was rich? So you could brag about having a successful daughter to go with your successful son? That's not fair. Isn't it? Mom, when's the last time you asked me how I was doing without it being a prelude to asking for something or telling me about Ethan's latest achievement? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Couldn't answer. He uninvited me from his wedding, I said quietly. Because I'd ruin the photos. Because I wasn't fashionable enough for his aesthetic. Because I didn't fit with his crowd. Those were his words. He didn't know. Exactly. He didn't know. He made assumptions based on how I dressed when I visited, what car I drove, where he thought I lived. And based on those assumptions, he decided I wasn't good enough for his wedding photos. What does that tell you about his character? About how he values people? Dad looked away. He couldn't defend it. Your brother wants to apologize, Mom said. In person. Can he come see you? I thought about that. About whether I wanted to hear Ethan's apologies, whether they would mean anything, whether this relationship was even worth salvaging. Yes, I said finally. He can come. Tomorrow evening. 7 p.m. They left shortly after, still looking shell-shocked, still processing the reality of who their daughter actually was. Ethan arrived at exactly 7 p.m. the next day, alone. He stepped out of the elevator and just stood there, staring at my apartment the same way our parents had. Hey, he said quietly. Hey. We sat in my living room, the city glittering below us, the silence heavy with everything unsaid. I'm sorry, he started. I'm so sorry. I was an asshole. I was cruel and shallow, and I excluded you from one of the most important days of my life because I'm a judgmental idiot who only sees surfaces. I waited. I've spent the last 2 days reading about you. About your company. Your innovations. The Forbes articles, the tech blogs, all of it. You built something incredible, Emma. Something that actually matters. And I didn't even know because I never bothered to ask. No, I agreed. You didn't. Why didn't you tell me? Any of us. Because I wanted to know who you were when you thought I had nothing. And you showed me. You all did. He flinched. That's harsh. Is it? You uninvited me from your wedding, Ethan. You said I'd ruin your photos. That I wasn't wedding material. Do you understand how that feels? I know, and I'm sorry. But you let me think. Don't, I interrupted. Don't make this about what I let you think. I dressed simply when I visited because I valued comfort over image. I drove a Honda because it's practical. I didn't brag about my work because I'm a private person. None of that was deception. It was you assuming that simple clothes and a practical car meant failure. You're right. You're absolutely right. The internet thinks I deliberately humiliated you, I said. That I planned the timing, that I went to that gala specifically to make your wedding look bad. Did you? I considered lying. Considered the clean simplicity of saying no. I had no idea this would happen. But I'd spent enough years hiding the truth. I knew there was a chance, I admitted. I knew attending a high-profile event on your wedding day might eventually get back to you. I knew how I'd look in photos compared to how you think I look. Did I plan for it to go viral? No. Did I hope you'd see those photos and realize what you'd done? Maybe. A little. Ethan absorbed that. So you did want to hurt me. I wanted you to understand consequences. There's a difference. You excluded me based on superficial judgments. I showed you that your judgments were wrong. That's not revenge. That's reality. Jennifer wants to meet you, he said suddenly. To apologize. She's horrified by what she said, by how she acted. Her followers are turning on her for being shallow and materialistic. Her brand partnerships are at risk. People are calling her a fraud. And is she sorry for her actions or sorry for the consequences? Ethan didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Here's what I want from you, I said. Not an apology made out of fear or social pressure. Not a relationship built on my net worth. I want you to actually think about how you treat people. Old people. The ones who can't help you, who won't elevate your status, who don't fit your aesthetic. I will. I promise. Do you want a relationship with me, Ethan? A real one, not one where you show me off as your successful sister or ask for money or connections. Yes. Honestly, yes. I miss you. I miss having a sister. I didn't realize how badly I'd fucked that up until I saw those photos and understood who you'd become without me. I've always been this person, I said gently. I was this person when I was 22 and starting my company. I was this person when I worked 100-hour weeks and slept in my office. I was this person when you dismissed me as boring and unsuccessful. My net worth changed. I didn't. I see that now. Do you? Or do you just see the money and the success and the connections I could provide? I don't know, he said, and I respected the honesty. I want to say I see you, Emma. The real you. But I'm not sure I even know who that is anymore. I'm not sure I ever did. We sat in silence for a long moment. Your wedding was beautiful, I said finally. I saw the photos online. Jennifer's dress was stunning. The venue was gorgeous. You looked happy. Until everyone started looking at photos of you instead of me, he said, but there was no anger in it anymore. Just resignation. That wasn't my intention. But you knew it might happen. Yes. So what now? He asked. Do I get a chance to fix this? To actually be your brother instead of the asshole who excluded you from his wedding? I thought about it. About whether people really changed, whether apologies meant anything, whether relationships built on years of dismissiveness could transform into something real. You get a chance, I said. One chance. But it's not about grand gestures or public apologies. It's about the day-to-day. How you treat people when there's nothing to gain. Whether you call me because you care about my life, not because you want something from it. I can do that. We'll see. He stood to leave, paused at the elevator. Emma, for what it's worth, you looked incredible in those gala photos. Way better than anyone at my wedding. Including me. I smiled. I know. The weeks that followed were strange. My life had been private, controlled, carefully managed. Now I was public in a way I'd never intended. Interview requests flooded in. Speaking opportunities at tech conferences. Invitations to join boards of directors. People wanted to hear about my journey, my strategy, my advice for aspiring entrepreneurs. Ethan tried. I'll give him that. He called once a week, asked about my work with genuine interest, stopped making assumptions about my life. Jennifer sent a handwritten apology letter. 4 pages, surprisingly thoughtful, acknowledging her materialism and superficiality. My parents struggled more. They wanted to be proud of me, but their pride was tangled up in disappointment that they'd missed so much of my journey. Dad kept asking why I hadn't let him invest in my company. Mom kept trying to introduce me to her friends as my daughter, the tech entrepreneur, claiming credit for my success in indirect ways. I set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries about what I would and wouldn't accept, what kind of relationship I wanted with them, what behaviors I wouldn't tolerate. Some of them respected those boundaries. Some of them didn't. 6 months after the wedding, Ethan and Jennifer had their first baby. A girl, Sophia. They asked me to be godmother. I said yes. Not because I'd forgotten what they'd done. Not because all was forgiven. But because I believed in second chances, in growth, in the possibility that people could become better versions of themselves. And because Sophia deserved an aunt who'd teach her that worth isn't measured in designer labels or Instagram aesthetics. That success is built through work, integrity, and treating people with dignity regardless of their perceived status. The wedding photos eventually made it into several online articles about wealth, class, and the assumptions we make about success. Jennifer's carefully curated aesthetic was compared to my gala photos, analyzed as a case study in actual versus performative luxury. It wasn't what either of us had intended, but the internet loves a morality tale. Ethan framed one of those gala photos, the one with me, the mayor, and the Fortune 500 CEO, and hung it in his home office. A reminder, he said, to never make assumptions, to always look deeper, to value substance over surface. I didn't frame any photos. I didn't need to. I'd learned my lesson years ago. Your worth isn't defined by other people's perception. Build your empire in silence. Let your success be the evidence. And when people exclude you based on assumptions about who you are, show up anyway. Just at a different venue in a better dress with more important people. Let them find out on their own. The truth always makes it to the wedding reception eventually.